Rose and Lotus. In the serene province of Chosun, during the mid-Joseon era, there lived a man named Bae. He was a man of noble standing and modest wealth, known for his integrity and the quiet dignity with which he carried his name. His wife, Lady Jang, was a woman of exceptional virtue and grace, her spirit as calm as a mountain lake. Together, they lived a life of harmony, yet a shadow of longing lingered in their halls, the silence of a home without the laughter of children. One night, Lady Jang was visited by a vision in her dreams. A celestial maiden descended from the heavens, draped in robes of mist and light, holding a blossom of ethereal beauty. With a gentle smile, the spirit offered the flower to Lady Jang, whispering that this gift was a soul destined for her womb. When she awoke, the fragrance of the dream seemed to linger in the air, and soon the prophecy bore fruit. The couple was blessed with 2 daughters. The first was named the Rose, and the second, the Lotus. True to their names, the sisters grew to be the very embodiment of floral grace. Rose possessed a regal, commanding beauty, while Lotus was as delicate and radiant as a morning bloom. They were the pride of the Bae household, educated in the classics and refined in the arts, their characters as flawless as their features. However, the seasons of joy are often fleeting. When the girls were still young, Lady Jang fell victim to a sudden, wasting illness. Despite the frantic prayers and the finest medicines, her life began to ebb away like a receding tide. On her deathbed, she looked upon her weeping daughters and her devastated husband, her heart heavy with the premonition of the trials they would face in a world without a mother's protection. With a final shallow breath, the light of the household extinguished, leaving Bae in a hollow silence. The mourning period was long and bitter. Bae wandered through his empty rooms, a man broken by grief. Yet, as time passed, the elders of the village and his own kin began to whisper of the necessity of a new mistress for the house. They argued that his young daughters required guidance and that a noble house could not stand without a matriarch. Though his heart remained with his first wife, the weight of tradition and the practicalities of the estate eventually forced his hand. He remarried a woman from the Heo clan. From the moment she crossed the threshold, it was clear that the atmosphere of the Bae household would change forever. Lady Heo was a woman of sharp angles and a sharper tongue. Her physical appearance, often described as grotesque and discordant, reflecting the turbulent nature of her soul. She was as ambitious as she was envious, and she viewed the 2 daughters of the first wife not as children to be nurtured, but as obstacles to be overcome. Her resentment only deepened when she gave birth to 3 sons of her own. In her eyes, Rose and Lotus were remnants of a past she wished to erase, elegant reminders of a woman she could never equal. She saw the inheritance of the Bae estate and the future of her sons threatened by the very existence of these 2 beautiful sisters. As the years progressed, the warmth that once defined the Bae home was replaced by a chilling tension. Behind her husband's back, Lady Heo began a campaign of subtle cruelty, weaving a web of isolation around the girls. She poisoned Bae's mind with whispered lies and fabricated grievances, slowly eroding the bond between the father and his daughters. The storm clouds had gathered over the house of Bae, and the fragile blooms of rose and lotus were left to face the coming wind alone. Time flowed through the Bae household like a slow, darkening river. Rose and Lotus grew into young women of such profound grace and intellect that their reputations spread far beyond the borders of Cheolsan. Luz, the elder, had reached the age of marriage, and soon prestigious families began to send inquiries seeking her hand. To any father, this would be a season of pride, but in the heart of Lady Heo, it was the sounding of a war drum. In the mid-Joseon era, a daughter's marriage was not merely a union of souls, but a significant transfer of wealth through dowries and inheritance. Lady Heo looked upon the family's coffers and saw them as the rightful birthright of her own 3 sons. Every silk robe gifted to Rose, every piece of jewelry intended for her wedding, felt like a theft from her own children's future. Her envy, long simmering, finally curdled into a lethal resolve. She realized that to secure the estate, she did not merely need to mistreat the sisters, she had to destroy their virtue. Her plan was as macabre as it was meticulous. One moonless night, driven by a malice that defied nature, she captured an enormous mountain rat. With cold, steady hands, she performed a gruesome task. She skinned the creature, leaving its raw, bloody form to resemble something unidentifiable and grotesque. In the deep silence of the night, while the household slept, she crept into Rose's bedchamber. With the silent precision of a predator, she slipped the bloodied, skinless thing beneath the girl's silken quilts, placing it near her abdomen as she lay in a peaceful, innocent slumber. When the dawn broke, the trap was sprung. Lady Heo did not scream. She orchestrated a reveal of calculated horror. She summoned Bae to the girl's quarters, her face a mask of grief and shattered honor. With a voice trembling in feigned shame, she claimed to have discovered a terrible secret, that the virtuous Rose had been carrying a secret life within her, and that it had been cast away in the night. She pulled back the covers to reveal the blood-stained sheets and the horrific, fetal-like shape of the skinned rat. To the untrained and panicked eye of a father, the sight was a devastating blow to his family's lineage. Lady Heo whispered of the ruin this would bring to their name, how the ancestors would weep at such a stain on their house, and how the suitors would laugh at their disgrace. Bae, a man of integrity but lacking the strength of discernment, fell prey to the gaslighting. He looked at the evidence through the lens of the lies Lady Heo had spent years planting in his mind. He did not see a daughter in need of protection. He saw a source of unbearable shame. The bond of blood, once so strong, finally snapped under the weight of his wife's poisonous tongue. The father's heart turned to stone, and in that cold silence, the fate of his eldest daughter was sealed. The shadow that had loomed over the house of Bae was no longer a threat, it had become the master of the home. The sentence of exile was passed not with a roar, but with a chilling, leaden silence. Bae, his mind a fractured landscape of shame and manipulated truth, could no longer look upon his eldest daughter. At the urging of Lady Heo, it was decided that Rose would be sent away, ostensibly to her maternal grandparents' home, but in reality, to a destination far more final. The morning of the departure was draped in a deceptive mist that clung to the pine needles like a funeral shroud. Rose, though her heart was heavy with a premonition of the end, maintained the quiet dignity that had always defined her. She dressed in her finest silks, a rose in full bloom even as the frost settled upon her petals. She was led away by her half-brother, Jang-so, a young man who had inherited his mother's cruelty without the tempering of her cunning. Their path wound deep into the mountains, far from the eyes of the village, until they reached the banks of the Mirror Pond. The water was unnervingly still, a dark obsidian eye reflecting the ancient trees and the indifferent sky. It was here that the mask finally slipped. Jang-so, his voice trembling with a mixture of malice and fear, revealed the true purpose of their journey. There was no grandparents' house at the end of this road, only the cold embrace of the depths. In those final moments, Rose did not beg for a life already tarnished by lies. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the heavens, her voice a soft, melodic lament that seemed to vibrate through the very air. She spoke to the spirits of the mountains and the water, testifying to her innocence and calling upon the ancestors to witness the injustice being done. With a final, lingering look at the world she was leaving behind, she stepped into the void. The surface of the Mirror Pond shattered, then closed over her, returning to its sepulchral calm. But the universe does not always remain indifferent to such profound cruelty. As Jang-so turned to flee from the scene of his crime, the silence of the forest was ripped asunder by a sound that froze the blood in his veins, a low, visceral growl that seemed to rise from the earth itself. From the dense thicket emerged a mountain tiger, a massive creature of striped gold and shadow, its eyes burning with a divine, predatory fury. The animal did not merely kill, it delivered a harrowing judgment. In a blur of fur and claws, it fell upon Jang-so, tearing into his flesh with a precision that felt orchestrated by a higher power. He was left broken and maimed, a living testament to the blood he had spilled. When the news reached the house of Bae, the atmosphere shifted from one of calculated deception to one of mounting dread. But for Lotus, the younger sister, the world had simply ended. The bond between the two had been more than blood. They were two souls sharing a single breath. In the days that followed, she became a ghost within her own home. Her laughter extinguished, her eyes fixed on a horizon no one else could see. One evening, a small bird with feathers, the color of a bruised twilight, appeared at her window. Its song, a mournful echo of her sister's voice. Led by this ethereal guide, Lotus wandered back to the Mirror Pond. She saw no reason to remain in a world where the rose had been crushed. With a heart that had already died of grief, she followed her sister into the dark waters, leaving the house of Bae to be swallowed by the long, encroaching shadows of its own sins. The Mirror Pond did not keep its secrets for long. While the waters remained unnervingly still, a spiritual rot began to seep from its depths, spreading through the province of Cheolsan like a slow-acting poison. The death of the two sisters had left a void in the moral fabric of the world, and in that void, something restless and sorrowful began to stir. Soon, the nights in Cheolsan were no longer owned by the living. It started as a whisper in the wind, a low, rhythmic sobbing that echoed through the bamboo groves, sounding like two voices intertwined in a singular grief. But it did not remain a mere sound. travelers spoke of two figures, draped in tattered white burial shrouds, standing at the edge of the mirror pond. Their faces were obscured by long raven hair that dripped with the dark water of the depths, and where they walked, the vegetation withered as if touched by a killing frost. The terror reached its zenith at the local government office. The position of governor in Cheolsan became a death sentence. The first official to arrive after the tragedy was a man of cold logic and little faith. On his very first night, the candles in his bedchamber flickered into a sickly green hue, and the air grew so frigid that his breath turned to mist. In the morning, he was discovered by his servants, his body rigid and his eyes wide, fixed upon a corner of the room that held nothing but shadows. His heart had simply stopped, petrified by a vision no doctor could diagnose. A second governor was sent, then a third. Each met a similar grisly fate. They were found with their features contorted into masks of absolute primal horror, as if they had looked directly into the abyss and found it staring back. The halls of the magistrate's office, once bustling with the business of the law, became a silent mausoleum. No lamp could keep the darkness at bay, and no amount of incense could mask the faint, metallic scent of blood and stagnant pond water that hung in the air. Word of the curse spread like a plague through the Joseon kingdom. Cheolsan became a place of exile, a ghost town where the living hurried indoors before the sun dipped below the horizon. The people whispered that the ghosts were not seeking blood, but a listener, someone who could bear the weight of a truth that the House of Bae had tried to drown. But until a soul of sufficient iron and integrity arrived, the sisters remained trapped in their spectral vigil, their weeping a constant, haunting reminder that while the law of man had failed, the law of the dead was only just beginning to preside. The province of Cheolsan had become a scar on the map of the Joseon kingdom, a place where the sun seemed to lack warmth and the wind carried a permanent chill. When the news reached the royal court that yet another magistrate had perished in the haunted office, a heavy silence fell upon the ministers. It was into this atmosphere of dread that a man named Jang Dong-woo stepped forward. Unlike his predecessors, Jang was a man of indomitable spirit, whose mind was sharpened by years of legal study and whose heart was anchored by an unwavering commitment to justice. He did not dismiss the stories of ghosts as mere superstition, nor did he fear them. He believed that a restless spirit was simply a soul denied its final peace. Upon his arrival in Cheolsan, the air in the magistrate's office was thick with the scent of stagnant water and old sorrow. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the courtyard in blood-red light, Jang dismissed his guards and sat alone in the central hall. He lit a single candle and waited, his hand steady as he held a volume of the classics. He was not waiting for a monster, but for a witness. The midnight hour brought with it a sudden, bone-deep frost. The candle flame turned a sickly emerald green, stretching long, distorted shadows across the paper walls. Then, the silence was broken by the sound of water dripping, a rhythmic, heavy patter against the wooden floor. From the dark corners of the room, two figures began to manifest. They were draped in the tattered white robes of the dead, their long hair matted with pond silt and their skin the color of winter moonlight. Instead of turning away in terror, Jang Dong-woo remained seated, his gaze fixed on the spectral sisters. He spoke to them not with the authority of a judge, but with the compassion of a father, asking why they lingered in the world of the living and what weight of injustice kept them from the afterlife. The response was not a spoken word, but a visceral outpouring of memory that flooded the room. Through their silent, weeping presence, the sisters conveyed the entire harrowing tapestry of their betrayal. Jong saw the image of the skinned rat, the cold eyes of Lady Heo, the shattered heart of Rose at the mirror pond, and the suffocating grief that had claimed Lotus. He felt the sting of their father's abandonment and the physical cold of the water that had become their grave. For the first time in years, the sisters had found a listener of sufficient iron to bear their truth. As the first gray light of dawn began to pierce the darkness, the spirits did not vanish in a scream of horror, but faded like a retreating mist, their eyes fixed on the magistrate with a desperate, lingering hope. Jong Dong-woo watched them go, his resolution calcified into a singular purpose. The law of man had failed these blossoms, but the law of justice would now be his only master. The trial for the soul of Cheol-san was about to begin. The following morning, the magistrate's office, once a place of haunted silence, was transformed into a site of absolute clinical scrutiny. Jong Dong-woo did not rely on spectral visions alone. He understood that to dismantle a lie, one must expose its physical foundation. He summoned the entire Bei household, including the trembling Bei and the defiant Lady Heo, who still wore her mask of wounded virtue like a suit of armor. When confronted with the accusations of the dead, Lady Heo did not falter. She once again produced the dried, grotesque remains of the skinned rat, presenting it as the definitive proof of Rose's impurity. She spoke with a venomous confidence, certain that the law would favor the tangible evidence over the whispers of ghosts. But Jong Dong-woo was a man who saw through the veil of appearance. He ordered a physician to examine the object, and with a single, precise incision, the truth was laid bare. Beneath the withered skin lay not the anatomy of a human life, but the coarse fur and bone of a vermin. The realization hit the room like a physical blow. The stain on the family's honor was nothing more than a macabre puppet stitched together by a heart of pure malice. The judgment that followed was swift and uncompromising. Lady Heo, whose greed had birthed a monster, was sentenced to a death that mirrored the cruelty of her own designs. Her son, Jiang So, already broken by the mountain tiger, was exiled to a frozen frontier where he would live out his days as a shadow of a man. The law, which had been blind for so long, had finally regained its sight. For Bei, the punishment was of a different kind, a slow, agonizing awakening to the depth of his own failure. He was spared the executioner's blade, but he was condemned to walk the halls of his silent home, haunted not by spirits, but by the memory of the daughters he had failed to protect. He spent years in deep atonement, his pride shattered, his soul a barren field waiting for a rain that might never come. Yet, in the tapestry of Joseon lore, the threads of sorrow are often rewoven by the hands of fate. Years later, after much prayer and a life turned toward virtue, Bei remarried a woman of immense kindness. One night, he was visited by a dream that carried the scent of mountain roses and lotus blossoms. The two sisters appeared to him, no longer draped in burial shrouds, but glowing with a celestial light. They forgave him, whispering that their time in the shadows was over and that the bond of blood was stronger than the stain of sin. Not long after, his new wife gave birth to twin daughters. They were born on a day when the mirror pond was as clear as a diamond, reflecting a sky without a single cloud. As the infants opened their eyes, the village felt a sudden, inexplicable warmth in the air, as if the land itself was exhaling a long-held breath. The sisters had returned, not as victims of a cruel plot, but as a new beginning. A testament that while evil may cast a long shadow, it is the light of justice and the resilience of the soul that ultimately claim the dawn. The tale of the rose and the lotus had reached its end, leaving behind a legacy that would bloom in the hearts of Cheolsan for generations to come.